All right, so at this point, I'm guessing you've picked up on the idea that fairness, justice, these require us to discriminate. We have to be able to identify relevant and meaningful distinctions among people and among groups in order to determine how to distribute the risks, the rewards, the sufferings, and the punishments and the sacrifices that we have to distribute. Now, sometimes we can think of being a discriminatory person and it's kind of a negative thing. We live in this age of, inclusion and openness and tolerance, and being discriminatory seems to run counter to those things. But I would suggest that one of the most important things you can do, and one of the reasons you're in college, is to be able to learn how to discriminate effectively. You want to be able to discriminate true statements from false statements. You want to be able to discern the good from the bad, the beautiful from the ugly, and so forth. So being a discriminatory person is not a bad thing. You want to have discriminating taste, for example. But we want to make sure that the way that we discriminate is justifiable. Okay, so the question then becomes for us, on what basis can we decide who deserves what opportunities and honors? Or as Sandel titles the chapter here, who deserves what? Who's worthy of the limited rewards and honors that we have to distribute? So you think about something like adoptive parenting, for example. There are more people who want to adopt than there are kids available for adoption. So how do we determine who is going to receive the honor of becoming an adoptive parent? And what Sandel suggests is that when we're faced with these kinds of questions, we might find answers by thinking carefully about the telos, or the purpose of the thing that we are wanting to distribute. Okay, so here we have adoptive parent is a role, an honor that we want to distribute. What's the purpose of being an adoptive parent? And we might say something like, well, the purpose of being an adoptive parent is to provide a physically, psychologically, emotionally healthy environment in which a child can develop into a functioning adult. All right. Well, if that's the case, if that is the purpose of being an adoptive parent, that allows us to justifiably discriminate among all of the potential adoptive parents to decide who is worthy of receiving the honor. Now, it might get trickier and more controversial when we're trying to distribute honors that are potentially unlimited. For example, the institution of marriage. That's an institution that brings with it an honor or a value. In our society, married couples receive tax breaks, for example. In our society, married couples enjoy an elevated social status over unmarried couples. And so the question for us is, well, who deserves this honor? And of course, this is a question that's been, debated in our culture here for a few decades now. So how do we define what a marriage is? What's the purpose of a marriage? And how we answer that question is going to determine who gets included for this honor and who's excluded from receiving this honor. So should brothers, for example, be able to marry? And if not, why not? Should groups of 10 or 20 or 30 people be able to marry? And if not, why not? Should I be able to marry my cat? And if not, why not? And as you think about how you would answer some of those questions, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up defining marriage in a particular way. And of course, that's what makes this controversial, right? Is that you're going to be excluding people that could conceivably be included if we simply broadened out the definition of what a marriage is. But you probably recognize that when we do that, at some point, we're going to start to diminish the value of the honor. Now think about something like U.S. citizenship. That is an honor. And conceivably, we could give this honor to everyone. We could make the entire world U.S. citizens, but that seems pretty impractical. So we're going to have to determine, well, who's worthy of becoming a U.S. citizen? And can we make that discrimination fairly? Right now, what we say is, look, you got to go through this process. You got to pass a citizenship test that most U.S. born citizens couldn't pass, and you have to have no criminal record, and so on and so on and so forth. Would it be more fair to simply use a lottery system and not have any of that criteria? Or are we justified in saying, look, you have to have some knowledge and you have to have a particular character. Maybe you even have to commit to a particular set of values in order to join our group. Now, of course, you see this coming up in the question about Callie, the cheerleader, right? Callie joins the cheer squad, and a father of one of the other cheerleaders is upset by this because he believes that allowing somebody who's not physically able to do the cheers in the way that all of the other cheerleaders are diminishes the honor of being accepted into the cheer squad. And of course, Sandel has his own argument for why he disagrees with that father. But there are other approaches that we could take to this other than looking at the telos of cheering, the purpose of cheering. We could, for example, just open up the cheer squad to an unlimited number of people. But of course, we run into that same problem. Well, when we do that, we diminish kind of the purpose of being on the cheer squad. You're supposed to have a particular set of skills to rile up the crowd. That's what we rely on cheerleaders for. And so if you open it up to everybody, you're going to get a whole bunch of people who don't have the ability to fulfill the purpose of the cheer squad. We could look at basketball teams. You might notice the basketball teams tend to have really tall people on them. Well, is that fair? Is it fair? Is it justifiable to allocate the honor, the reward of being on a basketball team by having to demonstrate your skill, knowing that part of your skill is based on, or part of your value as a player, it comes from something you have no control over, your height, right? That you have an advantage if you're a tall person on a basketball squad. And we might think about how this relates to similar kinds of restrictions that we put on other professions, right? Like to be on a police force, typically, there are certain height and age and age requirements that restrict who gets to join the force and who doesn't. Same thing with firefighters. Same thing with scholarships in college. How do we determine who gets the honor, the reward of receiving a scholarship? Should we use the criteria of need, or should we use the criteria of academic performance? And so again, we might say, well, what's the purpose of being a police officer or a firefighter or a student? Is the purpose of being a student to elevate that individual into an academic success that's able to live a better life than they ordinarily would be able to live? Or is the purpose of being a student developing a set of skills that will benefit the rest of society that paid for this scholarship that they've given you? All right, so when we think about these questions about how we discriminate and how we distribute these limited honors and rewards that we have, we want to begin by looking at the purpose of the thing, the telos of the thing.